Hello, everyone. Today we're going to be talking about how to work effectively with Indigenous communities. We will be reviewing the concepts of community development, ownership, consultation, empowerment, capacity building, reciprocity, and respect, and explain their roles in healthcare delivery and researching with Indigenous individuals and communities. We will also identify key principles in developing collaborative and ethical relationships with Indigenous peoples. Identify key community contacts, mentors, and support structures in the provision of effective healthcare. Describe the role of partnership, ownership, and ethics in developing appropriate research methodology. Community development involves community members actively participating in identifying and addressing issues that affect their lives, aiming to improve the overall quality of life within their neighborhood or region by taking collective action, often with a focus on empowerment, social justice, and equitable access to resources, rather than relying solely on external agencies to solve problems. It involves building community capacity through collaborative efforts to create positive change. Key aspects of community development include community-driven. Residents are considered experts on their own needs and actively participate in decision-making throughout the process. Holistic approach addresses multiple aspects of community well-being, including economic, social, environmental, and cultural factors. Empowerment aims to build capacity within the community to address issues and lead change. Collective action encourages collaboration among residents to achieve shared goals. Social justice focus strives to address inequalities and promote equity within the community. Examples of community development initiatives: neighborhood revitalization projects, improving housing quality, creating green spaces, and enhancing infrastructure. Economic development programs, supporting small businesses, job training, and entrepreneurship initiatives. Community health initiatives, promoting access to healthcare, health education, and wellness programs. Youth development programs, providing opportunities for young people to engage in leadership development and community service. Advocacy campaigns, mobilizing community members to address social issues and policy changes. Community development plays a crucial role in healthcare delivery by empowering Indigenous people to actively participate in shaping their own health services. Ensuring culturally relevant care is provided by addressing their specific needs and priorities through collaborative decision-making, building trust with healthcare providers, and respecting their traditions and knowledge systems, ultimately leading to improved health outcomes. Key aspects of community development in Indigenous healthcare. Community engagement, actively involving Indigenous communities in all stages of research, program design, implementation, and evaluation, allowing them to identify key health concerns and guide the development of appropriate interventions. Culturally appropriate care, incorporating traditional healing practices, language, and cultural values into healthcare delivery to ensure a respectful and meaningful experience for Indigenous patients. Leadership development, supporting the growth of Indigenous health leaders within communities to advocate for their needs and guide healthcare initiatives. Addressing historical trauma, recognizing the impact of colonization and historical trauma on Indigenous health, and incorporating strategies to promote healing and resilience within healthcare practices. Community-based research, conducting research in partnership with Indigenous communities to ensure the research is relevant, culturally sensitive, and respects their knowledge systems. Benefits of community development in Indigenous healthcare include improved access to care. By actively engaging communities, healthcare providers can better understand barriers to care and develop strategies to overcome them, leading to increased utilization of services. Enhanced health outcomes. Culturally appropriate interventions designed in collaboration with communities are more likely to address their specific needs and improve health outcomes. Building trust with healthcare providers. Collaborative approaches can foster trust between Indigenous communities and healthcare systems, leading to better patient-provider relationships. Empowerment and self-determination. Community development allows Indigenous people to take ownership of their health and advocate for their own needs. Important considerations when working with Indigenous communities. Respecting sovereignty. Recognizing the unique political status of Indigenous communities and ensuring their self-determination in healthcare decisions. Cultural awareness. developing a deep understanding of Indigenous cultures, traditions, and beliefs to provide culturally sensitive care. Community engagement ethics. Building genuine partnerships with communities, including transparent communication, informed consent, and equitable benefit sharing. Community ownership is a model in which a community or group of people share the rights to and management of resources, assets, or services. In Indigenous communities, community ownership can take many forms, including collective rights. Indigenous peoples have a tradition of collective rights to lands, territories, and resources. These rights are based on their deep spiritual, cultural, social, and economic connections to these resources. Stewardship. Indigenous nations traditionally focus on stewardship or caretaking responsibilities of resources, knowledge, and relations. Renewable energy. Indigenous communities can partner with renewable energy developers to share ownership of projects. This can include models like general partnerships, limited partnerships, or equity ownership. Respect for the land. Native peoples have a regenerative relationship with the land based on the idea that the land is sentient and holds immense energy. They believe that one cannot own land, but rather one may live with it. Community ownership can be beneficial to Indigenous communities in several ways, including protecting self-determination. Community ownership models prioritize the autonomy of the local community in decision-making processes. Contributing to well-being. Indigenous peoples' collective rights to lands, territories, and resources can contribute to their well-being and the greater good. Protecting the environment. Indigenous lands contain 80% of the world's remaining biodiversity, and secure Indigenous lands provide important ecosystem services. Community ownership when working with Indigenous individuals and communities means actively involving community members in decision-making, program design, and implementation of health services, ensuring that the care provided is culturally appropriate, relevant to their needs, and respects their autonomy, leading to better health outcomes by fostering trust and empowering Indigenous communities to take control of their own health destinies. Key aspects include cultural sensitivity. Integrating traditional knowledge and practices into healthcare delivery, respecting cultural values and beliefs. Community engagement, actively involving elders, community leaders, and individuals with lived experience in the planning and evaluation of health programs. Self-determination, allowing communities to decide what health issues are most pressing and how to address them, including choosing appropriate interventions. Capacity building, providing training and support to Indigenous community members to take on leadership roles in health initiatives. Research ethics, following principles like OCAP, ownership, control, access, and possession, to ensure Indigenous communities have control over research data and its use. Community empowerment in Indigenous communities refers to the process where Indigenous people gain the power and agency to make decisions about their own lives, cultures, and communities, often by actively participating in leadership roles, advocating for their rights, and taking charge of issues impacting their lands and resources, ultimately aiming for self-determination and social change, all while respecting their traditional values and practices. Community empowerment involves building capacity within the community to address challenges and pursue their own development priorities, rather than relying solely on external interventions. Key aspects of Indigenous community empowerment. Cultural preservation, prioritizing the revitalization and protection of Indigenous languages, traditions, and knowledge systems. Land rights, securing access to and control over traditional lands and territories essential for cultural continuity and economic sustainability. Community-led decision-making, empowering Indigenous leaders and community members to actively participate in decision-making processes affecting their lives. Economic self-sufficiency, developing sustainable economic initiatives that benefit the community, such as community-owned businesses or resource management projects. Capacity building, providing training and support to develop skills in leadership, advocacy, governance, and community planning. Community empowerment plays a crucial role in healthcare delivery and research with Indigenous communities by allowing members to actively participate in decision-making processes regarding their health, ensuring culturally relevant interventions, and fostering a sense of ownership over their healthcare. This ultimately leads to better health outcomes by addressing their specific needs and priorities while respecting their cultural values and knowledge systems. Key aspects of community empowerment in Indigenous healthcare. Participatory research. Involving Indigenous communities in all stages of research, from identifying research questions to data collection and interpretation, to ensure the research is relevant and culturally appropriate. Community-led initiatives. Empowering communities to develop and lead their own health programs based on their identified needs and priorities. Shared decision-making. Collaborating with Indigenous leaders and community members to make informed decisions about healthcare policies and service delivery. Addressing power imbalances. Recognizing and actively working to mitigate power imbalances between researchers and Indigenous communities. Developing mutually beneficial relationships with Indigenous communities takes time and consistent effort. Be intentional with interactions to ensure communication is clear and straightforward. Some key principles for developing ethical and collaborative relationships with Indigenous peoples include respect. Respect Indigenous cultures, knowledge, and traditional practices. Indigenous communities value their art, ceremonies, social structures, and other cultural aspects. Self-determination. Ensure Indigenous peoples have a sense of ownership and that their knowledge is central to the issue. Decolonization. Create space for Indigenous cultures and ways of knowing, and give Indigenous peoples the opportunity to lead research. Partnerships. Develop partnerships with Indigenous peoples, communities, agencies, and leaders. Protocols. Observe community protocols to show respect for the community's culture and traditional ways of being. Protocols vary between Indigenous cultures and communities. Key principles. Reciprocity. In many Indigenous cultures, gift-giving and reciprocity are important for building relationships. Early engagement. Early engagement is a key part of meaningful consultation. Trustworthiness and transparency. Be trustworthy and transparent. Patience. Be patient. Involvement. Be involved and invested. Crucial community contacts and support structures. To include when providing effective healthcare for Indigenous communities are elders, traditional healers, community leaders, Indigenous health workers, culturally competent healthcare providers, community health boards, youth advocates, and peer support networks. Each of these contacts play a vital role in bridging cultural understanding, promoting trust, and ensuring culturally appropriate care delivery, with a strong emphasis on respecting Indigenous knowledge systems and community leadership. Key points about these community contacts and support structures are elders. Considered vital sources of wisdom and cultural guidance, often acting as advisors and mentors to both healthcare providers and community members. Traditional healers. Practitioners of traditional medicine systems who can be integrated into healthcare delivery to address spiritual and cultural aspects of health. Community leaders. Individuals recognized by the community as spokespeople, facilitating communication between healthcare providers and the community. Indigenous health workers. Community members trained in healthcare delivery, often acting as cultural brokers and navigators within the healthcare system. Key points about these community contacts and support structures are culturally competent healthcare providers. Clinicians actively seeking to understand and respect Indigenous cultures, incorporating cultural sensitivity into their practice. Community health boards. Representative bodies within the community that provide input on healthcare needs and priorities. Youth advocates. Young people actively engaged in advocating for the health needs of Indigenous youth. Peer support networks. Groups of individuals with shared experiences providing emotional support and connection to one another. Partnership when developing research methodologies with Indigenous communities means actively collaborating with community members as equal stakeholders throughout the research process, ensuring they have ownership over their data and knowledge, and upholding ethical principles like respect, reciprocity, and cultural sensitivity to ensure the research is relevant, beneficial, and conducted in a way that honors their traditions and values. This includes actively involving community members in research design, data collection, analysis, and dissemination, while prioritizing their input and concerns at every stage. Key aspects of this approach include community engagement, Building strong relationships with the community before starting research, understanding their priorities and concerns, and obtaining informed consent through culturally appropriate methods. Co-creation of research questions. Working with community members to develop research questions that are relevant to their needs and align with their cultural perspectives. Data ownership and control. Giving Indigenous communities the right to access, control, and determine how their data is used and shared, including the ability to decide what information is sensitive and should not be disclosed. Respectful research methods. Adapting research methods to fit the community's cultural practices, including using traditional knowledge holders, storytelling techniques, and community-based forums for data collection. Capacity building. Supporting community members to develop research skills and participate actively in the research process, empowering them to lead future research initiatives. Reciprocity. Ensuring a mutual exchange of knowledge, where researchers not only learn from the community, but also contribute their expertise to benefit the community. Some ethical considerations to keep in mind when developing research methodologies with Indigenous communities include informed consent, obtaining fully informed consent from participants, including clear explanation of the research purpose, potential risks and benefits, and the right to withdraw at any time. Cultural sensitivity, being aware of and respecting cultural protocols, including language, customs, and spiritual practices. Data protection, safeguarding sensitive information and ensuring privacy of participants. Benefit sharing, clearly outlining how research findings will be shared with the community and how they can benefit from the research outcomes. Overall, the goal is to shift the power dynamics in research by prioritizing Indigenous voices and knowledge systems, ensuring that research conducted with Indigenous communities is not only ethical, but also meaningful and beneficial to them. When developing a plan to engage an Indigenous community, please keep these points at the forefront of the efforts. Practice cultural sensitivity. Respect sovereignty of the Indigenous community. Ensure community-led decision-making. Promote participatory research. And demonstrate trustworthiness and transparency. Remember to treat all stakeholders at all levels with honor and dignity. Here are our resources. Thank you for listening to this presentation.